Only two goals for the video today. First up, we're gonna build this obnoxiously baller $2,000 gaming PC, and then after that, I'm gonna get a Fortnite dub with it. But we gotta build the thing first. This is an unbelievably sexy looking gaming PC, and honestly, if I can't get the dub in Fortnite, then the problem is definitely on me and not this build. But before I get all those headshots, let's take a very quick look at this parts list. Starting with the CPU, this here is honestly one of the best mid-range options to go with here in 2022 so far. This is the Intel i5-12600K, and with its latest 12th gen technology and its 6 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, and 16 total threads, this is an absolute beast of a CPU. The 12600K can handle honestly any GPU that you throw at it without having to worry about a CPU bottleneck. But if you do want to save a little bit of money, don't be afraid to go with the much cheaper 12400F, or honestly even the 12100F is really solid for the price for those more budget friendly builds. The motherboard we're plugged into is the MSI Z690 Edge Wi-Fi, the DDR4 version, and now's a great time to tell you that today's video is sponsored by MSI, but we did run into a little speed bump when trying to make this video, which I think you guys should hear about. MSI actually chose all of the parts for today's build, and honestly, they did a really good job, but for the motherboard, they originally tried to send over this MAG B660M Mortar Wi-Fi DDR4 version, and although this is a really solid motherboard, this is a micro ATX motherboard, and since we have a full-size ATX case, you guys know there was no way that I was gonna let that happen. Although this Mortar Wi-Fi is definitely an amazing motherboard option with its beefy VRM design, a super clean black, white, and silver aesthetic, the Frozer AI cooling, and definitely that 2.5 gigabit LAN port, all of that is irrelevant to someone like me that puts aesthetics over everything. I've said this so many times already, but I just hate when people try to put a micro ATX motherboard inside a full-size ATX case. It leaves a nasty, unaesthetic gap there at the bottom, and it looks way worse when you use an all-white case. I actually recently just did a build like this on my Thirsty Thursday PC building live stream every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, by the way. And although I did manage to make this build look somewhat decent, that white gap there at the bottom still looks really awkward, and I always recommend matching the size of your motherboard with the size of your case. Thankfully, I convinced MSI that they just gotta trust me with my aesthetic vision, and they eventually sent over this Z690 Edge Wi-Fi board, and this thing is a monster. I really like this all black and clean design. It's got a 2x8 pin power connector layout if you really want to dial in those overclocks, and all of those shields on the M.2 slots, chipset, and PCB just look amazing for a high-end build like this. Thank you very much, MSI, for believing in me and not just sending one, but 2 motherboards to make this build possible. I promise you it was worth it. And you guys know that I love the Toasty Bros as well. I consider both of those guys my friends actually, but they also built the same parts list that MSI must have sent them, but with the smaller motherboard. And here you can see that awkward gap in the case, and it just looks weird with the motherboard kind of floating right there, and it's just not an aesthetic that I could have accepted as the aesthetic god here on YouTube. No hate being sent to the Toasty Bros at all. I'm just super happy that we have their build to compare to with the same parts list. Moving on here though, we definitely got some other parts to talk about. For the RAM, since MSI doesn't make their own, they simply sent over this Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro 2x16 gigabyte kit that's clocked at 3200 megahertz. Very nice choice for this build. Next up, we have some storage, and this unit I've never actually tried before. This is the MSI Spatium M480, which is a massive 2 terabyte Gen 4 NVMe drive, and this thing is rocking reading writes of 7000 over 6800, which is blazing fast. That'll be perfect for loading in and out of those loading screens as quickly as possible. They also sent over our power supply, which is the A750GF white model, and not only does this thing look amazing with no vinyl wrap needed, but it's also 80+ gold certified, fully modular with white cables, and it's rated tier A on the PSU tier list. It's pretty much as good as it gets. And they didn't just stop with that banger either. They also sent over this beautiful case, which is the MPG Gungur 110R. Honestly, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but that doesn't matter. This thing is beautiful. This is sporting the ATX form factor, which I explained earlier, and I really like the half glass front panel, the slot in the PSU shroud so we can show off our sexy PSU model or even a vinyl wrapped option. It has a ton of radiator and extra fan support, and it even comes with 4 pre-installed RGB fans, which you'll love to see. And speaking of radiators, they also hooked us up with one of those two cool R12600K. This is the MAG Core Liquid 240R V2 White Edition, and this will definitely keep our temperatures nice and low no matter how many headshots I land back to back to back in Fortnite. I absolutely love the aesthetic design of this cooler, and it matches almost pitch perfectly up at the top of our case to really round out the color scheme and aesthetics of our entire build. It is worth noting, however, that the shade of white color for the RGBs does vary slightly from the case fans to the radiator fans, but you almost always see this with white RGB products, unfortunately. The white Asia Horse cable extensions that I personally threw in the build do the exact same thing, by the way. And finally, for the last part, you know MSI couldn't leave us hanging with the graphics card, and they decided to send over this MSI Ventus 3X RTX 3070 Ti, and I'm so thankful that they sent this one out. Not only is this almost perfect for our black and white aesthetic design, just like all Ventus cards are, which is why I use them in so many other build guides, but this RTX 3070 Ti is going to ensure that we can keep our frame rates high even in 1440p, which will certainly help me accomplish my mission of getting the dub in Fortnite. Be sure to keep an eye in the upper left-hand corner during the upcoming montage, and you'll see that the 3070 Ti combined with the 12600K gave me an amazing gameplay experience. Here's what the final parts list is looking like today for our build, and like I mentioned earlier, the only component that I personally threw in here were the Asia Horse cable extensions because I can't control myself, but seriously, big props to MSI for coming up with this parts list because this is honestly a super aesthetic and also performance balanced system here.
I don't want to waste any more time though. It's time to drop out of the battle bus and see if this build can hang with me. Let's try and secure this Fortnite dub without hopefully too many attempts at doing it. Let's go. There we go, just getting warmed up. All right. Sit down. Okay. There we go, we're on the board. I'm telling you, this is the one. Oh. No, okay, I'm done. Didn't get the dub.
Hopefully you enjoyed that headshot killing spree. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it out alive with the dub this time, but your boy still did do some great work down there, but we gotta move on to wrap up this video. Here are some other games that we benchmarked just so you can get the full scope of what our 12600K and RTX 3070 Ti are capable of doing. All of these benchmarks are indeed in 1440p, and these are some pretty crazy results. Huge shout out again to MSI for not just making this video possible, but for also just sending out all of these parts. And if you are interested in another gaming PC build guide that's about half the price of this one, don't fret, I also got you covered with the video that's on the screen now.